where do you see Zaven playing on the defense, and what are the things that you really like about this guy above other players you could have had?
He'll line up at Mike linebacker for us, so right beside Isaiah Simmons. What I liked about him was everything: size, football acumen, instincts, coverability. This guy's got rare and unusual movement skills for a guy who's almost 6'5", 265 pounds. You watch him at Tulsa and the way he covers smaller backs, tight ends, slot receivers at times. You don't see a lot of men like this size that has this type of range and athleticism. So we really liked him. Our coaching staff, our scouting staff, everybody as a whole had him as one of our higher rated defensive players in the entire draft. He also had an alpha tag, which for us, the Alphaberg tag is given to players that have rare leadership qualities, great instincts, great feel for the game, are tremendous locker room guys, and Zaven Collins is certainly one of them. So there's generally about 4 or 5 of them in this draft, or in most drafts. There were 5 in this draft, and Zaven Collins was one of the alpha birds for us.
This is for Coach Kingsbury. Kliff, was there a push-pull at all with you guys in the war room, just offense, defense, or was it sort of a unanimous, we got to go defense first?
Yeah, kind of how the board fell. Like Steve mentioned, he was one of our highest rated guys overall. We had a great feel for him. I've known Coach Montgomery from Tulsa for a long time, and so we felt really good about the information we got out of there, what he's about. The film speaks for itself, and the rare athletic traits are just special. And so there wasn't much doubt whenever the pick came.
Steve, when you take a look at hybrid players, positionless players, and that's the way the league's trending, talk about is that Zaven Collins, excuse me?
No, I mean, I don't think he's a guy that's a positionless player, Mike. I think he's a guy that's a Mike linebacker. He played. It's not like this is a projection. I know that some people have referred to hybrid players like a Hassan Reddick, who was a rusher in college and high school, and then we moved him to play stacked linebacker here. This guy has played stacked linebacker, which is a whole different deal when you see the vision and the ability to play from that second level. So I think he's a Mike linebacker. I think he's got all the traits you look for. There have been guys in the past that have similar size. One of the most recent players that probably has similar measurables is Tremaine Edmonds, who came out of Virginia Tech a few years ago, and I believe was actually the 16th pick in the draft out of Virginia Tech.
Steve, what does this mean for Jordan Hicks now? And then also, when did you guys start to lock in on him and kind of realize he was the guy you wanted if he was on the board?
Yeah, I mean, we I wouldn't say we locked in recently. This was a guy that, as you know, we went through the season and our scouts went out on the road. Very early on, John Mancini, our area scout, who does a tremendous job, had him graded one of his top defensive players in the draft and one of the highest grades you can give. So he was high on him early on, and then a number of our other scouts went in there, felt the same way. I took a look at him, our coaching staff, Kliff, and then we went through the interview process, and just his presence and the way it felt to talk to him in person. I mean, it just really, to me, was a guy that stood out throughout the process this spring. And then we saw him at his workout, and he had a tremendous workout in terms of his drops and his movement skills. So he is going to have an impact for us early in his career, that's for sure.
Next up, please, Tyler, Darren, and Kyle. Okay, no Tyler. Move on to Darren, Kyle, and Catherine.
Hey, Kliff. So knowing that Collins plays that inside linebacker where Hicks is, do you see Hicks starting there initially and then Collins working his way in there? Do you have a hope that Collins can start right away? How do you kind of see that playing out? Yeah,
we'll work through it as we go. Obviously, you don't take him with a 16 pick unless you expect him to play, and he isn't a guy who's moving positions or had his hand down. I mean, he played inside linebacker. So like Steve mentioned earlier, it's not a projection. This is the position he played. So I don't think the learning curve will be very steep for this young man. He was valedictorian of his high school. So we expect him to come in and play a lot immediately.
Steve, I know Kyler and the offense get a lot of focus, but this defense made some pretty big strides last year, and you've added some big pieces. Are you excited about the trajectory and the ceiling of what the defense can do next season? And does this just add to that?
I do, and second year, this past year under Vance Joseph and learning the terminology and having a better understanding of the system, I think really paid some dividends for our defense. And then as we get a little more athletic and we add pieces to this puzzle, I think it's going to pay, again, huge dividends. A guy like this, again, in this league where people try to create mismatches, and then linebackers aren't always three-down players. This is a guy who has the ability to be a three-down player. And again, playing side by side with Isaiah Simmons, when you see those two guys in there with their length, I mean, it's really like having two trees in the middle of the field.
Steve, when y'all both mentioned that this is not a projection, you know exactly where you want to play him. Was that more important this year after seeing, how there was such a sharp learning curve last year with the offseason being so different? Was that a bigger factor to know where he would go in right away?
Yeah, I mean, it always helps. I mean, every evaluation is a projection from the standpoint, it's a projection to the NFL and how those skills match up at this level. But the fact that he's played the position, again, like Kliff said, high school valedictorian, extremely intelligent. As we quizzed him, and that was one of the things that our coaches spent a lot of time doing this spring as we talk to these young men, is to talk about the football side of it, calling the defense and all those different things. And when you watch Zaven, not only is he impressive athletically, but you watch him before the snap and his pre-snap stuff with directing traffic and communicating was excellent. So we took all those things into account when we made this pick.
Next up, please, Sierra, Cam, and Jess.
You guys mentioned that he was valedictorian, and he's got a really interesting backstory, even being a gymnast when he was younger. So, Steve, I want to ask you, what about his backstory stood out that's really interesting to you?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things. I mean, not only how intelligent he is and the passion. He came from an extremely small town in Oklahoma. Didn't get highly recruited. I think Tulsa was his only Division I scholarship. So to not only be a high school quarterback and linebacker and safety and all the different positions he played, then the transition to the college level and sort of a guy that maybe little bit of a late bloomer and grew into his body. And to see what he did on the field. I mean, I think he had some of the highest accolades you can have as a linebacker this past season at Tulsa. And not only that, you saw it in the passing game with interceptions for touchdowns, the ability to change field positions, which was huge for that football team, and again, will be huge for us, knowing that we have two inside linebackers that can excel in coverage.
Hey, Kliff, this guy had 50 touchdowns in high school. Any chance you could use him on offense? And then second, did y'all guys learn anything with Isaiah Simmons last year where maybe the learning curve won't be as high for Zaven moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're all set at quarterback. I know he was quite the athlete, but I think we're in pretty good shape there. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I think knowing that he has played middle linebacker, in a similar three-down scheme, it won't be completely foreign to him, and that's going to help. He's a quick learner. He's going to get a lot of time on task, a lot of reps. We're planning on having the rookie mini camp in 2 weeks, and so I think there's some real pluses to the history has the position and how this offseason is going to go.
Hey, Steve, there was a report after he weighed in at his pro day at 259 that he added weight to 270. You just said he was at 265. Did you guys ask him to add any weight to that? And secondly, where did he stack up in terms of compared to the other guys left on the board? Was he comparable, a little bit higher, significantly higher than what you guys had?
I think after his pro day and his workout, he had quite a few steaks, which I happen to have from time to time. And he gained a little bit of weight. I talked to him about it. In fact, I FaceTimed and I made him get him on the scale, and he was back down to his playing weight. So felt good about that. He's a guy that I think, the one thing that you take for granted is when you see him and you see him in person, realizing that whether he's 260 or 265, it's different from a normal man. A lot of these linebackers are 5'11" or 6'2". This guy's almost 6'5". So to be 260, 265 pounds, he doesn't have a lot of fat on his body, and he moves extremely well. So he is an unusual prospect from that standpoint when you look at the height, weight, and speed and the movement for a guy that with that stature.
We'll wrap it up with 4 more. Craig, Colin, Kyle, and Mark.
Hey, Steve, I'm just curious. You had talked last week about the possibility of trading down a little bit. Was there any opportunities for you to move in the first round here, or were you pretty solid when Zaven was falling to you?
Yeah, there was a number of conversations as usual, whether it was to move up or to move down that people had called about. So, but once we got to that pick, Zaven was way too high on our board to not select him at that point.
During the ranking the board process, did you have to fight the need at all to elevate cornerbacks because people seem to think it's a need? And I'm just wondering if you feel like it's as big of a need as outside people project it to be.
Yeah, no, we didn't. I mean, listen, I mean, there's a number of positions that we can certainly improve upon and get more depth, but as we've talked about, you don't want to force a pick. You don't want to take a player that's either got concerns off the field medically, or quite frankly, push a guy up your board because you have a specific need at a position. Because again, they always change.
Hey, Steve, as the pick got closer, I'm wondering just kind of the emotions, the nerves going through. Was he a guy that, you know, you maybe had identified for a couple picks and were hoping he would be there? And what was it like kind of getting to that point where he was there?
Yeah, I think anytime you pick and you're picking in the middle of the round, you get anxious and you know other teams like him right around where you're picking. So you get a little concerned and until you see the team before you pick and you can identify who that player is, there's always this anxiousness and excitement in the room that the player that you covet is still there.